Without further ado, Rob, you feel free to take over the screen, and the show is all yours.
Thanks so much for that really nice introduction, Ken. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here sharing this information with you. So, can you see my screen? Let me know if there are any issues. I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking about how to plan and organize your 2021 job search. And so before we get into the content, I just want to mention that you can get the slides at any time by just typing this link into your browser. You don't even need www. Just type in bit.ly/BEA as in beacon, and then today's date, 02/04/21. You can get the slides, and I'm also going to share with you a contact management template that we're going to be discussing later in this presentation. Just a couple of other things before we get started. I'll be talking a lot for the next hour or so, and then we're going to get into, we'll have lots of time for a very in-depth Q&A. So feel free to type your questions in at any time into the chat feature. And also, there'll be a couple of opportunities where I'll be asking for your input on things I'm sharing with you, and you'll use the chat feature for that as well. So just wanted to let you know about that. And all right, so let's dive in. So here's what we're going to be covering in terms of planning and organizing your job search. We're going to be, and I want to give you sort of like an overlay for how to think of these points. Like, you want to think about your job search as like being like a sales and marketing effort. Like, you want to think of yourself as like the best salesperson in the world and the best marketer in the world. And if you just pretend you're the best salesperson, the best marketer, you'll almost know what to do. So any great salesperson will figure out like, who's the audience, like that job targets, right? Who am I targeting? Now I need to have a plan to reach that audience, the marketing plan. What is my positioning? What's my branding? What am I going to say that's going to resonate with that audience? This is all sales and marketing. That's what I teach clients every day in my practice. And now if you happen to be in sales or marketing, you're probably going to understand a lot of this, even if you do it like every day. I've worked, in fact, I've learned some of this from some of the great business development executives that I've worked with. So you get the idea, right? Then how do you spend your time? What's the best use of your time to get meetings, to get interviews? And lastly, how can you avoid certain pitfalls? How can you plan ahead to make sure your job search, rockets forward and doesn't get stalled? So that's what we're going to cover. So let's start with the job targets, right? And the point is, you want to take a targeted approach. So some of you may recognize this picture. This is Leonardo da Vinci. He was considered what they called a Renaissance man, meaning he could do like anything. He was like an artist and a sculptor and a scientist and a historian and an architect and an engineer. And like, he was just so good at so many things, and he really kind of shone in all those fields. Now, the thing is, in a job search, you do not want to be like Leonardo da Vinci. You do not want to be a Renaissance person. You want to take a much more targeted approach. So I see clients often come to me with long, frustrating job searches looking for help. And one of the reasons is they're like saying, look, I'm a finance director who also does IT, I'm also can do some serious IT leadership and project management. So now what happens when maybe you're great at all three of those things, but what you're doing essentially when you say on equal footing, you put yourself forward as great at all three of those things, you're saying, you tell me where you should put me. I'll let you figure it out, right? And what happens is they often don't take the time to figure it out, or they'll put you in a place you don't want to be. And what's as bad or worse is if you're trying to appeal to an audience with multiple targets at once, you're watering down your message for any one of those targets. So if you're going for a finance director or a finance SVP role, but you're also saying project management executive and this other stuff, if you're doing it on an equal footing, your message isn't as strong for any one of those things versus your competition, who's got that resume that's totally targeted to that finance SVP position that you're going for. So that's what happens when you water down your message. And sometimes, so basically the message to you is try to create a targeted message through your resumes, all that stuff, right? Your outreach. So one target is better than two. Two targets is better than three. right? In terms of having a message that's not as watered down, that's going to make it easier for them to see where you're going to fit into the organization. That doesn't mean you can't go for multiple job targets. You absolutely can and should. I always encourage clients to have multiple targets, but don't go for them all at once in the same communication. That's the message here, right? So what do I mean by target? What I mean by target is a specific definition. It's this. It's the job title or description, the type of organization defined by the industry, the organization, like, startups versus global multinationals versus pharmaceuticals versus financial services, that kind of thing, right? A nonprofit versus for-profit. And sometimes geography matters as well. And if you look at these two parameters and sometimes these three parameters, if you change one, you're changing the audience. You're changing the answer to the question that audience is looking to an answer for, which is, how can you help me, right? You're changing the answer you need to give if you change one of these parameters. So it means you have to change your positioning. You have to change the wording on your resume. Sometimes it's only a little bit. Sometimes it's a lot. But that's what I mean by knowing what your target audience is and why it's important to have this definition in mind, right? So just thinking about this, job target examples, right? Here's a job target example, director of marketing, right? Can somebody just type into the chat, is this a good job target based on the definition I gave you? And if not, why not? And if it is, tell me why. Director of marketing, is that a good job target? I'm looking at your chat comments. Anybody want to share their thoughts? I'm getting too broad, very broad. Nope, what kind of marketing? Marketing what? I love the comments. That's it, thank you. Not specific enough? You're getting it. Exactly, it's too broad. You can be like a chief marketing officer, which is strategic, it's got budgets, you've got to build a team, right? And you can also be a marketing analyst, or director of marketing, I'm sorry. Well, that in terms of the specificity of marketing, you can be a chief marketing officer or marketing analyst, right? That's one thing, right? But if you're a director of marketing, you can be, what type of marketing? Is it marketing, as you said, is it like omni-channel or is it some other type of marketing? I totally agree, right? What type of organization too? Where's the organization here? So is it director of marketing pharmaceuticals versus director of marketing in an information technology firm? Very different needs. Is it director of marketing in a nonprofit versus director of marketing at a for-profit startup? Very different needs. They're looking for different things. So you're sort of missing that point too, right? Now, just to build on what you're all saying, like marketing, right? This is where like marketing tech companies, greater New York City, now you're getting more specific about the company, the type of organization, but marketing is too broad, as you were saying. It could be chief marketing officer, it could be, marketing analyst, very different responsibilities, right? Now, this third one here, director of marketing, mid to large tech companies, greater New York City area, now you're getting to it. Now you're getting to a clear audience, which has a specific answer they're looking for to that question, how can you help me? So that's what I mean by targets. Now, some clients say, all right, Rob, well, I get the concept. I understand what you mean by targets, but I have no idea what I want to do. I don't know what to prioritize. I'm not sure exactly what my next move is. This is a crucial part of the planning phase. So what you need to be doing is you need to be thoughtful about what you want to target. And the way I think about it with clients is you want to choose what you want to do next based on some combination of what you enjoy most that you do well, what's your vision for your life, like it's even broader than your job or your career, like 5 years down the road, 15 years down the road, even longer, like what do you want your life to feel like, to look like? You want to make sure what you do next fits in with that vision. What are your work-related values that you don't want to compromise on? Maybe for some people it's money. I need to make X dollars a year, or I can't pay the mortgage or send my kids to college or whatever it is. For some people, it's like, maybe it's like enjoyable colleagues or flexible schedule or power or whatever values are important to you. Take a note of that, right? Another thing you might want to think about is like, what regrets do I want to avoid having, say 15, 20 years down the road, looking back at this time of your life, right? So think about those things, like the things you enjoy doing that you're great at, because you want both of those in your next job, your values, your interests that you don't want to compromise on, potential regrets, and your long-term vision for your life. And what I do with clients, there's lots of ways. Once you get this data on yourself, this is sort of like the assessment, right? You're getting data on yourself so you can make decisions. And you want to put that data down on paper or in a spreadsheet somewhere where you can analyze it and make decisions. If you Google decision making, there are lots of decision making frameworks you can use. I mean, the one I like, it's pretty simple. Essentially, you just like brainstorm in rows, like a bunch of job targets, possible job interest targets, and brainstorm based on your research, based on talking to people, based on maybe just having based that, right? Like looking at job postings and typing in keywords, see what types of postings come up, right? What is the outlook for different sectors? Like you want to go and choose a sector that has growth potential, so you're not out of a job in a few years. So brainstorm those job targets, put those in rows, say on a spreadsheet, and then in columns, what you want to put in is those assessment results, and then check off the number of columns that particular job target satisfies, the number of decision-making elements that you came up with that job target satisfies. And the more columns that are checked off for that row, for that job target, the higher priority that is. Now, you can even overlay like weighting onto this, and that complicates it more. It's more time than we have in this session to discuss. But I think you're getting the idea. You should really be thoughtful about this and do this in a methodical way to figure out what you want to do next. All right, so that's targets, right? We covered the definition of a target. You want to know who your audience is so you can create great copy, create marketing materials that will resonate with them, just like any great salesperson would do, right? And now we're getting into the planning phase, right? So what I mean by planning is you literally want to create a marketing plan for yourself. And here are key elements of that marketing plan. So you want to list somewhere, a spreadsheet, piece of paper, Word document, target companies. You want to list the actual companies because, and by the way, this implies something we're going to talk about in a few minutes, which is when you create a marketing plan, what you're implying is that you are not just waiting for stuff to show up. You're not waiting for that, just for the job posting to show up or for the search firm to call. You're going for it. You're actively figuring out where you want to work and then trying to get interviews at those places, just like any great salesperson would do, right? Any great business development person wouldn't just wait around for opportunities to come. They would go out and try to build relationships and get those opportunities, right? That's what this implies. We're going to be talking a lot more about that in a few minutes, right? The active approach to your job search. So anyway, creating that plan so you can execute on this active approach to your search implies knowing what companies you want to work at, ranking those companies, like where A is like the ones you're most highly prioritizing, and C a little bit less. And then guesstimating the number of potential positions by company. We're going to talk about that more in a second. So when we talk about prioritizing your job targets, so as I said before, you want to have more than one job target in case that job target doesn't work out. Have 2, 3, 4, even 5 job targets. Don't try to market yourself for all of them in one resume, as we discussed before, but reach out to them in sort of a prioritized way. If you start with one target, you build some momentum in that, maybe 3 or 4 weeks out, you've got some meetings going on, then you say to yourself, you know what? I've got some momentum here. I don't have to work as hard now to get those meetings. I can now start to reach out to target 2. So you're going for these targets in order with some overlap. That's the strategy here, right? And so now the other thing, and that implies what I'm about to share next, which is you want to focus. You don't want to go for them all at once. And the reason you want to prioritize them is if you try to go for them all at once, again, this is where I see clients have very long searches, is that you end up not really getting good at selling yourself for any one of these job targets because you've got to practice. And when you are trying to constantly switching targets, okay, now I'm going to talk to this person about this CFO role. Oh, now I got another interview for this project management role. And then the day after that, I have an interview for this, information technology role. When you're doing that, you're have to constantly change your pitch. You have to constantly change the way you're selling yourself. It becomes actually very inefficient, and you just don't get good enough at selling yourself. You got to practice your pitch. You got to practice, and you want to get to know people in that sector too and become like an insider. And it's harder to do that if you're constantly switching targets. So you want to prioritize, go for them one at a time with some overlap. That's the message here. Now, I mentioned before, right, like guesstimating the number of potential positions by company. That plays into this next slide here, which is you want to target enough potential. Meaning you want to fish in a sea with a lot of fish. If you're just fishing in a sea with one fish, you're unlikely to ever catch one, or it's going to take you a really long time, right? So what I mean by fishing in a sea with a lot of fish is you want to target enough organizations so that you're targeting enough potential positions that exist. They don't even have to be open, just positions that exist. Let me give you an example. So I had a client who was targeting a chief marketing officer role at hedge funds. And he worked sort of in a remote part of the country. So he had identified 13 potential hedge funds where he wanted to work. And there was only one chief marketing officer at each of these hedge funds. It makes sense, right? So that means he was targeting only 13 potential positions. Now, that's like a 5-year job search. Targeting 13 potential positions, probably they're all filled, or maybe most of them are filled. And even if 1 or 2 open, you have to compete with the whole world to get them. You're probably not going to get just that 1 or 2. There's a lot element of luck here, numbers game. We'll talk more about that. So that's a really long search. So he had to ramp it up. And the way I told him to ramp it up is I said, listen, you should aim for targeting roughly 200 potential positions. Now, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not that a lot if you're thinking about it in terms of positions that exist, whether they're open or not. So the way he got to 200 was he expanded geographically. He expanded the types of organizations he was targeting. He went beyond hedge funds. And he was also expanding the types of positions. He didn't just go for chief marketing officer. He also said, you know what, I can also report into a CMO if I'm at a larger organization. So he started targeting SVP or CMO roles. So suddenly he had all these positions. It became no problem. Like he was out in this remote area. All of a sudden he started targeting these big cities like New York and LA, where there are lots more companies, and there wasn't an issue anymore. He got to that 200. Okay, that's just a rough rule of thumb. So here's an example of a marketing plan. Now, there's something wrong with this plan, okay? I want to show you what's right with it first, and then I want you to tell me what's wrong with it, and feel free to type into the chat feature at any point what you think is wrong with this marketing plan. So you can see there are 4 job targets here, right? The first one is very specifically defined, Senior Investor Relations Officer, right? Mega cap public tech company in the San Francisco Bay Area. Here are the companies that my client, she was targeting, Salesforce, Alphabet, right? She put down the number of potential positions at each. This is a guesstimate. You don't have to like overthink this. Just like she knew, there's probably, there weren't 5 or 10 senior investor relations officers at Salesforce. It couldn't only be like 1 or 2. So she put 2. That's how she was thinking about it, right? For target 2, director of finance at a pre-IPO startup in the same region, she figured, you know what, there's at least 4 directors of finance at Lyft, or maybe there's not 1, there's got to be more than 1 or 2, and there's probably not 10. So she guesstimated 4. That's all you need to do. This is a back of the envelope calculation, right? Then she did the same for target 3, director of corporate communications, and target 4, director of marketing, right? In these different sectors. She added up all the numbers. She prioritized, right, the companies, A, B, and C. She ranked them. Then she added up all the positions, right? All the 2s, the 1s, the 4s, right? All that, right? And what happened? She got 75 potential positions. So what's wrong with this? Anybody want to tell me in the chat feature, what's wrong with this marketing plan? Why is this going to be a long search? Anybody? Let's see, wrong order, not hyper-focused, could use more targets. Okay, I think Ken's getting there. Anybody else? Too many areas of focus? Okay. Okay, I'm going to spell it out. Not enough positions. Christopher, you got it. Nice job. That's the issue. So I want to address what some of you typed in here because I think it's important. So the wrong order, that's for her to decide. if she really was most interested in terms of what she enjoyed doing, that she did well, her vision for her life, all that stuff, it was senior investor relations officer. So that was the right order for her, not hyper-focused. She's, in terms of, I think what you meant by that is that it was specific enough. I would say this is pretty specific. Maybe you're thinking it could be more specific. I'm not sure how, but to me, this, and to my client, this seemed pretty focused in terms of the types of roles. The other issue could use more targets. I think 4 is a lot. In fact, my client never even got to target 4. She did really well with targets 1 and 2. She didn't even need to get to targets 3 and 4 because she was getting so many interviews, and she ended up getting a job in her number 1 target. So in this case, I think you'll find if you do this, you really don't need more than 4 job targets. I think too many areas of focus, essentially you're saying too many job targets. This is like, I think, probably if you have more than 5, you'll never get to them. That's the issue. You can have 10, who cares? Have 100, but will you ever get to them? Probably not. It's not even worth writing them down, So I think in that sense, I think no more than 5 is good. But anyway, and I appreciate the other comment, industry or company type too broad for fashion or retail. Director of marketing, industry or company type too broad for fashion or retail. That's interesting. You think that's too broad? Maybe it is. We have to have a conversation about that. Maybe you know more about it than I do. But if there's a strong case to be made that your pitch needs to be different for companies within fashion, I would agree with you, actually. If I think about what she meant by this is fashion, not just retail. Retail is pretty broad. But I agree. If you think in retail, there's all kinds of retail, and then you'd have to, they may be looking for different things depending on the type of retail. So maybe you are right there. But anyway, I appreciate the comments. They're very thoughtful. But the biggest issue really was that there's just too few positions being targeted. This was going to be a long search. So what she ended up doing, see, everything was San Francisco. She said, you know what? I could live in New York City. I'm going to open this up and have the same targets, but also add New York in here. That more than doubled the number of positions, and she got to roughly 200 positions. That's what she did. So anyway, okay, so let's keep going. So the next thing I want you to think about is that you want to position yourself correctly so that what you're saying, what you're writing is going to resonate with that target audience. So let's look at, and when I say position yourself correctly, what I mean is you want to position yourself for your job target, not for your last job, for the audience you're going for. And you want to position yourself across all your marketing channels, ideally the same way, whether it's your resume, your LinkedIn profile, the emails and cover letters you're writing, or the meetings you're having, virtual and in this day and age, right? In person, hopefully soon. Because if you don't want to change the pitch. You don't want to change the core messaging about where you fit in and what differentiates you across these channels, because that repetition helps cement that understanding in the audience. Like you're saying the same thing over and over again in different ways, and they get it. And any great marketer will tell you that repetition helps to get the message across. Now, the one exception sometimes is LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, you can only have one profile, one account. If you have more than one account on LinkedIn, you should close one, because it's going to ruin the power of LinkedIn to help you. You don't want to have duplicate accounts. Trust me on this, right? Your network will be all split up. It'll be a mess. But so you can and should have multiple resumes for if you have 3 job targets, have 3 different resumes. But for LinkedIn, you have to decide, well, if I have one profile, should I combine all those job targets in one profile so I don't miss any opportunities, but then I'm watering down my message for any one of those opportunities? That's the downside. Or should I just have a very targeted LinkedIn profile for one of those job targets, but now I'm missing out on the other 2 job targets? So there is no one right answer. It really depends on your situation. This is a conversation like I have with clients all the time. We figure it out. What's the best strategy for you on LinkedIn? But just keep that in mind. But ideally, you want to try and replicate that message, that same message across all those channels. Now, here's an example of what I mean when I talk
Rob,
about positioning yourself,
Rob,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but because it's on this topic, before you go to the next one, there was a question about whether this person or you would suggest they go to the target first, or do they go to the companies, the A, B, or C companies first?
I would always start with the target, because I wouldn't, that's a great question, but all I want to say, and I'll just answer it quickly because there's still a lot more to get to, but if you go for the company, you might say, I really want to work at Google, or wherever you want to work, right? But you know something, you could be miserable at Google, no matter how great a company that is, because you're doing the wrong job. I mean, it's not just, you got to come into work feeling good about your job every single day. And you could feel great about your job at Google, or you could feel really bad about your job, depending on what you're doing. You really want to start with, what is it you enjoy doing that you do well? What's your vision for your life? You know, what are your work-related values? The things that are going to get you out of bed every morning excited to go to work. And then you want to figure out where you want to do it. That's how I would answer that question. Okay, Ken? All right. So let me give you an example now. So we're talking about positioning yourself correctly. So here's a client who was in banking, who was a director of business analysis, and she wanted to make a move into higher education. And first thing she did, she's like, you know what? I don't want to work in banking anymore. I want to do something in higher education, but I don't know what that is. I got to figure out what my target is, my audience is, right? So first she did some research. She talked to people. She talked to people even where she didn't want, at universities where she didn't want to work, where she went to school, just to find out what she could do. And she realized that she could help, through those conversations, she could help universities figure out which people would likely donate to the university, so they could target their efforts, their fundraising efforts, through her director of business analysis experience and acumen. So she was thinking about that was her target. So this is what she had on her resume that she was going to send out to these universities. She had bullets like this: doubled credit card balances, increased revolver retention by 57%. Like, this was never going to fly, because this was going to hurt her so much, because they're like thinking at a university, like, credit card balances, like, we don't deal with credit cards here. She doesn't understand us. Or what's a revolver? You know, that's a credit card term, right? That's where the area she was in. We don't even know what that is. Like, it would just make her sound like she doesn't get them. They wouldn't understand that this is useful to them. But it was such a simple tweak to each of these bullets to make it resonate with that target audience at universities. So I'm going to ask you again to enter in the chat feature. Let's look at both of these. And let's start with the first one: double credit card balances. How could you change it to make it resonate with a university? How could you change this resume bullet to make it resonate in a university setting? Any thoughts? Type it into the chat feature. Okay, I like what you're saying. So what you're trying to do is just find other words, right? Like doubled loyalty to product. I love it. That's the kind of thing, right? Increased program participation, right? What she did, so you're on the right track. It's really good, okay? So what she ended up doing was, she said doubled marketing's return on investment, which is, so you're on the right track with that, right? She just took, and so what's a different word, a way of showing financial success other than credit card balances? So that's what she did, right? How about the second one? Now, this is even easier. This is even easier. In the chat feature, tell me, increased revolver retention by 57%. How could you just make that resonate with that university audience? Okay, I love what you guys are doing, right? And you're all on the right track, but my favorite one is Lynn, who said, take out the word revolver. Exactly, it's the simplest thing. You don't even have to think about it in a different way. Just take out the word revolver. And so just increase retention, because every university cares about retention. It's just a different type of retention, student retention. So that's it. So you're getting it, right? So this is how you need to think about, when you're in terms of planning and organizing, you want to think, how can I take what I've done in my planning phase and make it resonate with what I'm looking to do next? And there's sometimes very simple tweaks to make it work, okay? And so you may be thinking like, well, I told you about how my client in this case did her research to figure out her positioning. You know, she talked to her alumni who work in universities to get, that was how she did it, really. So just some other, I mean, this is kind of basic stuff, but like, Look at job boards. Look at the words and phrases they're using for what you want to do, and give it right back to them. That may be the first thing I would do. Just look at LinkedIn profiles. Look at the journals that represent the sector you're targeting. This is just an example, right? Financial Analyst Journal. Join the right association, an association that has the people in it that could hire you, and see what they're talking about, and see who's presenting and what kind of words are used and phrases and topics that are being discussed. Talk to your alumni. Look at the investor relations section of public companies, because they have all kinds of like presentations and recordings of the presentations to analysts they do every quarter that can really tell you what's important to them. I also have a ton of resources on my website that can help you research industries and job targets and see what phrasing and words will resonate with those industries. So you might want to check out the resources section to do some research there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about positioning. And once you figure out how you want to position yourself, what the words and phrases are you're going to use that will resonate, you want to develop a pitch. The pitch is, where do you fit in? What box are you in the org chart? What differentiates you from the competition? What makes you different? How do you stand out? And examples of your success. Now, I could talk for 2 hours about your interview pitch or your networking pitch. That's a whole other presentation, right? But I want to give you some idea now. You should really be thinking about this now if you're looking to have a job search, like these things. You want to communicate to them where you fit into their organization. Don't let them figure it out. It'll take them too long, or they'll put you in a place you don't want to be, or they may just be like, I don't want to do it. It's too much work for me, right? Try to make it easy for them to see where you fit into the organization. Oh, you're in that box in the org chart. Then, of course, you want to show them why you and not the competition. What differentiates you? This is like essential in any kind of pitch, right? And lastly, you want to highlight high level in any kind of pitch, whether it's a pitch that you're delivering in an interview or in a networking situation or an informational meeting. You want to have a couple of high level examples ready. They'll get them curious. So they'll say, tell me more, like a bullet. Like I did X, which resulted in Y, something you can pull right from your resume. In fact, if you write the summary section of your resume the right way, the outline of your pitch, most of the outline is going to be right there, okay? So this is a summary section for a senior finance executive. So you can see what she had here was, this is what categorized her. I'm a senior finance executive. For her, she was targeting like CFO or one down, like running like a financial planning and analysis group. What differentiates me? Well, and she was targeting big media companies. So what differentiates me? Well, I worked at HarperCollins, NBC Universal, Viacom, big media companies. Plus the consulting is good, useful as well, right? I also have M&A, and so in 1 second, they see where she fit into the org chart. In 4 seconds, they see what differentiates her. And in the remaining like 11 of the 15 seconds that anybody's looking at a resume, some research says even less than that. She's got like her greatest hits. So you could pull a couple of these out here if you're delivering a verbal pitch, right? But this is essentially much of the outline for any kind of pitch you're going to deliver even in an email, in a meeting, in an interview. It's this. And one last thing you might add is like how other people see me, So I tell you, I have not practiced this. I haven't looked at this in a long time, but I could probably come up with a interview pitch. If somebody said, tell me about myself just from this, right? I could say something like, if they said, tell me about yourself, I would say, well, look, as a senior finance executive, I've had 15 years of experience in the media industry. I also bring my CPA credential, as well as experience in accounting, FP&A, M&A, and big media company experience, including Viacom, NBC Universal, and HarperCollins. Let me give you a couple of examples, just so you can see how I can help you. So when I was at Viacom, I restructured their business model in Europe, which enabled us to grow profits from negative 10% to plus 15%. I think you get the idea, right? You can make this conversational, right? That's how you do it, okay? Now, I'll give you one more idea for when you craft your pitch, something else you want to think about, which is also, even before you say any of this, like I just started doing a pitch from this outline, you want to hook them in. You want to grab their attention. And this is like the hardest part of the pitch to come up with because it requires a little bit of creativity. It requires you to think, what is the essence of the value I bring? What really differentiates me? Why am I great at what I do? So I'll give you some examples here. This will get you thinking, right? So I was just working with a client. So you might put in front of this, what I just did here with the finance person, start with your branding or hook, right? I'm not just a finance executive. So, I'm also, when I work for an organization as a finance executive, I don't see myself as just a finance executive. I'm also an engineer and a diplomat. I'm an engineer because, and then you go, why? Like, in other words, I'm an engineer because I solve the difficult problems that background helps me it gives me insight. And I'm a diplomat because I know how to build relationships with the key stakeholders in finance, including the business units and whatever. You get the idea, right? I had another client who said, who's a director of business analysis. And I said to her, what makes you great at what you do? Well, she said, well, throughout my career, I've led teams that have turned data into actionable insights that have driven the business forward. That was the beginning of her pitch before she even said, as a director of business analyst, I bring 15 years of experience. Then she went into all that stuff, right? I had another client who was a insurance risk underwriter, said, I see myself as turning uncertainty into opportunity. I think you're getting the idea, right? Corporate development executive for private equity energy firms. Tell me about yourself. Well, I'm truly an energy insider. Then he went into the rest of his pitch, right? I think you get the idea, right? So you could look at these, right? I had one client here who was like a VP of information technology. I said to him, yeah, you're telling me you have 15 years of experience or 20 years of experience and you've done all these things, but what makes you really great at what you do? He said, I can make PCs dance. I said, that's the beginning of your pitch. Okay, so maybe these will inspire you to come up with your own branding. Okay, so let's talk about the active approach we started to talk about earlier, right? Because you don't want to be this guy. You don't want to be floating around in this ocean, hoping the currents are going to take you to that island of your dreams. You want to figure out what that island of your dreams is, where it is, and then actively swim to it, or even better, rocket to it, okay? So implied in this is you want to think about this in terms of the 4 ways of getting interviews, right? The 4 ways, like job postings, search firms, direct contact, meaning cold emailing and cold calling, and networking, getting introductions, right? Job postings and search firms are the passive way. You're waiting for stuff to come to you. Roughly 20% of interviews are gotten this way because it's the front door. Everybody's doing it, so the competition's the toughest. The hiring manager isn't doing the screening. A computer usually is, or maybe a low-level HR person. So they don't even know the job. They're not even evaluating you properly. Right, you get the idea. So it's just hard, even if you match perfectly, to go through this route. Now, I'm not telling you not to do job postings. Yeah, if you match perfectly, apply, but go beyond that. Try to reach out directly as well, okay? And so, because most people are getting interviews these days through the active approaches, not floating around in that ocean, but actively swimming to that island of their dreams or rocketing to it, okay? Through cold emailing and cold calling and networking, getting introductions. They're working it. And so if you're working, what you should be thinking about when you're planning your search is if you're going to work on this full-time 5 days a week, say, 4 of those days should be on the active approach, the cold emailing and cold calling and networking, and 1 of those days should be spent on the postings in the search firms. Just like any great salesperson would do. They wouldn't be relying on things just coming to them. They would be actively looking to make connections, to build relationships, to keep in touch, right? We're going to talk more about keeping in touch in a few minutes, about how to do that. Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at the time here. We're good. So, all right. So what I'm telling you basically is if you are taking that active approach, you are tapping into the hidden job market, which is the relationship-driven market for unadvertised jobs, right? That means you're building these relationships, so when something comes up, they think of you, and you'll get the interview as soon as there's an opening, before there's even a posting. That's what this is about. Now, underlying this hidden job market, this strategy for getting interviews, is a two-phased approach that I want to discuss with you. For taking the active approach, it really involves two phases for tapping into this hidden job market. Stage one is you want to get the word out to your network. I'm challenging you to find 200 people to reach out to, people who might be open to helping you. I'll talk to you about how 200 is no big deal. You probably think, 200, I only know 5 people. No, you know way more than that, and there are way more that would be open to helping you. That's stage one. Just get the word out. Let them know what's going on. Stage two is getting at least 6 things in the works at any given time. So what I mean by a thing is a meeting or an interview with people 1 or 2 levels above your level, people in a position to hire you, even if there's no opening right now. It's very important what I'm about to say. Even if it's not an official interview, even if there's no opening, if you're having a meeting with a person in a position to hire you, 1 or 2 levels above you, in other words, and they say, hey, you know, after you're having this informational meeting, they say, you know, you're great. Too bad we didn't talk with you 6 months ago when we really needed somebody. That should be music to your ears, because that means you're pitching yourself the right way and you're talking to the right people. Because then all of a sudden, like, okay, great, thanks, great to hear that. Who else should I be talking to? Ask them, right? Like, what do you think of my marketing plan? You show them the companies that you're targeting. They'll say, oh, I know somebody there, and you'll get an introduction. Or you keep in touch, and a month later, something opens up on their team, or they hear about something that opens up somewhere else. That happens only when you get the meeting. That won't happen if you just send somebody a resume or an email. You have to get the meeting. So when I talk to clients, I'm working with clients, and we're in an ongoing search, and I'll say, very often I'll say, so tell me, how many things do you have in the works? And I love it when they say something like this. Well, I have 6 things in the works, Rob. I have 3 meetings on the calendar. 2 of them are informational meetings with people 1 or 2 levels above my level. And 1 of them is an interview. And I also have 3 meetings I'm actively following up on. 2 of those are interviews that, you know, look like they might move forward. And the third one is an informational meeting that could turn into an interview. That's what you need to do, because when you have at least 6 things in the works, you are playing the numbers game to win, because 5 of those 6 things are going to fall away through no fault of your own. Budgets change, people leave, the strategy changes. Maybe they have somebody on the inside who they know better, or, you know. So you've got to play the numbers game to win here. Okay. So have at least 6 things, have 10 things, you know, but at least 6 in the works. It's a stretch goal, right? So that's how I want you to think about this. Now, let's talk about how to execute this strategy. The way you execute the strategy is you build relationships now that are going to lead to those informational meetings and interviews to get you those 6 things in the works. You have to build those relationships now to get those meetings and interviews, to get those 6 things in the works. Then you want to plan to set yourself up for these high ROI informational meetings. When I say high ROI, I mean high return on your valuable time investment informational meetings. So we're going to talk about that, and then have a method for keeping in touch. So we're going to basically talk about these 3 things now to basically finish off this presentation. So in terms of building relationships now that will lead to the informational meetings and interviews, what you want to do is network, right? Get introductions and build relationships over time. And the over time part is very, very important, okay? You want to keep in touch with people. If you're not keeping in touch, you're not a good networker. It's 50% of networking, okay? And what you want to do is, remember I said before, you want 200 people. You want to reach out to 200 people, let them know about your search. Now, if you think about your network very broadly, it's not so hard. You know, all these people are in your network. Let me just give you a couple of examples. So I had a client who noticed on LinkedIn that somebody he went to business school with 18 years earlier worked at a company where he wanted to get an interview. He hadn't spoken with that person in 18 years, but he saw that on LinkedIn that they worked there. So he reached out to them. He ended up getting the interview. Right? That's the kind of thing you need to do, right? Another client, talking about acquaintances like your neighbor, right? She said, you know, Rob, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to include my neighbor on this email I'm going to send out, telling everybody what I'm looking for and what I'm doing. Even though I really don't know her well, I have her email address. So she included her neighbor. Turns out her neighbor's husband's brother's wife worked for the CFO of this big company, and she ended up getting an interview with the CFO. So that it's often the people you least expect who are the ones who are going to help you. In fact, the reverse happened. Like somebody reached out to me I haven't worked with since 1996. You know, I have a corporate background. I worked at JP Morgan Chase for 11 years, Amex for 4 years, the Fed for 5 years. That all informs what I share with clients. When I was at Chase, I worked with this guy in 1996. We hadn't talked in, a long time. And we worked for a couple of years. He reached out and said, "Hey, Rob, it's been so long." And I remembered him, you know, and he said, "Look, I'm wondering if you could connect me with X." And I was happy to do it because even though we didn't work that closely together, it was only a couple of years, you know, I had positive feelings. I was happy to make that introduction. So you need to do that. You want to think broadly about your network, okay? And you also want to build your network. You want to grow your network. Join the right associations. It's like one of the best things you could do in your job search is join the right association. Now, you're lucky to be, many of you or most of you, in Beacon. That's a fantastic association to be in, right? It's a profession. It's a great organization to identify and find opportunities. You should leverage the Beacon membership list, see who does what, and leverage that membership, and try to build relationships. And you know, people will talk to you if it's the right association. But beyond Beacon, find those professional associations that represent that the job target you're targeting. So for example, I'm in the Association for Talent Development, and I've been on the board. I run their career development SIG, and I see people who want to get into talent development, who are making career changes, or people who are in talent development, but they're in transition or looking, even if they're not looking, they're happily employed, but they may be looking for a new job. They get involved with the association. They don't just join, but they even get involved, and they become known to the other members who can hire them as not just a resume, but a human being who's done all those great things in the association. They can get interviews anywhere with all those people at the association. So you should do that. Cold outreach, meaning emailing and cold calling, you should definitely take advantage of that. I know it sounds hard, but it's a whole other conversation. But again, if you write the email the right way, you will get their attention, through these cold emails, and you'll get a meeting. It's just like any great salesperson would do. And I'll just give you a couple of tips. If you're going to reach out cold to somebody, you want to be specific. You want to, don't be general, like your company's great. Like, why is their company great? Be specific. You don't, in your subject line, you don't want to say hello. You want to be very specific. Discuss X at your company, something like that. You want to, in these cold outreach, you want to make yourself sound interesting. So you don't want to make your email too short if you're reaching out by email. You want to make it, you want to have that email have something interesting about you, something about your success. Take a little excerpt of that pitch that's in the summary section of your resume and put it in your emails. So they'll want to talk with you. And you want to ask for just 20 minutes. Everybody's got 20 minutes somewhere. And try to make it mutually beneficial. Say, I'd be happy to talk with you. I'd be happy to help you if I can, even introducing you to people in my LinkedIn network. I mean, if you can make it mutually beneficial, that'll really improve the odds of you getting the meeting. So just a few thoughts on that. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for getting, building your network, getting introductions, and then just using your network, or the network you already have, to get new referrals, and then use those new people to get other referrals, right? Let's talk about LinkedIn for a second, because LinkedIn is such a great networking tool if you know how to use it the right way. So the right way in a job search, and for most of us, with a few exceptions, is with your network. It's quality first, then quantity. So by quality, I mean people you know in some way, and you're open to helping them, they might be open to helping you. Or connection requests from a stranger, and you want them in your network. So let me just back up for a second. There are some people on LinkedIn who have tens of thousands of connections on LinkedIn. They just connect with the whole world. They don't care if they know them or don't know them. There's even a name for them. They're called LinkedIn Lions, right? And now the issue with that is you don't want to be a LinkedIn Lion, especially in a job search. And for most of us, with a few exceptions, you don't want to do that in your career. First of all, it's too easy to do that. I mean, it's almost brainless to have a huge network. I mean, just accepting requests from strangers that you don't know and just sending out random requests to strangers, and they accept because they don't know how to use LinkedIn properly. It's not hard to do that, right? But they'll never help you. because they don't know you. You're a stranger to them. They just think, oh, I'm on LinkedIn now. I just accepted this request. I've seen it over and over. They're just total strangers. And if you are using LinkedIn as a giant billboard for your services, if you're just trying to build a following, then you might want to do that. But if you want to use it as a real networking tool, which means building relationships and keeping in touch, you want to know them in some way. So quantity is important. Like, connect with 1 billion people, because it'll help you to find out the people you want to find out, and it'll help you to be found too, right? But try to know every one of those 1 billion people. So, for example, when people send me an invite to connect, I ignore a lot of those requests. And sometimes I'll look at their profile and say, they look interesting. Maybe they wrote me a nice message. And so I could see they get the idea of networking. They understand that. So I'll just agree for that reason and then write them a nice message back. So I establish a relationship that way. Or maybe they work at a company with I think maybe I can do some business with, or maybe they'll be a client of mine sometime. So then I'll accept their connection request, and I'll say something like this. Hi, Margaret. I appreciate your request to connect. Just accepted. As I like to know everyone in my first degree network, I'm curious as to how you came across my profile and or why you decided to reach out, right? So this is the kind of thing I do all the time. And I've gotten business through this message because people respond and then they write something, and all of a sudden we get to know each other a little bit. You want to try to create new business friends. Now, if they don't respond to this or they give you a lame response, then just to remove them as a connection. You don't need them. Who needs them in your network? Let me just underscore this a little bit more because it's really important. I'm going to jump over to LinkedIn for a second. Where am I here? Okay, I'm just going to go to my home page, right? And I'm on my homepage. You can see my homepage feed. I know all these people. Oops, what is this that just popped up here? I know all these people who are posting here because I made an effort to know them, even if it's just a little bit. So, like, I know Gabby. I know, because I know these people. I will like their posts, share their posts, comment on their posts. I might even email them separately. It's a great way to keep in touch with the true network, right? And so you might even you might do that. You might post something up here saying, like a client said, having meetings with senior executives in for-profit education. She posted that. Someone said, hey, I didn't know you were looking. You should talk to X. She ended up getting an interview. I was looking at this feed and I noticed somebody got promoted because I have a quality network. This feed is meaningful to me. If they were a bunch of strangers, I would never look at it. It doesn't mean anything. So I was looking through this. I said, oh, this person I haven't talked to in 5 years got promoted. So I sent them a note. Congratulations on their promotion. They emailed me back. Thank you. We went back and forth. I ended up doing some work for their company. So that only happens because I have a quality network. And by the way, if you're searching for people to reach out to, which you should be doing, you should be looking at companies and trying to figure out who can introduce you to people at those companies. If you have a network of strangers, those search results will be meaningless. You're just going to see a bunch of strangers coming up. Okay? So what you need to do to build your network quickly, if you don't have a big network on LinkedIn, is just clicking on my network here. What you want to do is scroll down, look at like people you may know. LinkedIn suggests all these people you may know. That's a quick way of building your network. You can also click more options over here on the left and import your address book or wherever that is. If it's on a spreadsheet or on Gmail or an Outlook or wherever, you can import it and then choose who you want to send an invite to quickly build your network. Look, LinkedIn's not going to be helpful to you if you have like less than 100 connections. It's too small. No one's going to find you and you're not going to find anybody. So at least 100 connections. I would challenge you to get 200. Most of you probably have at least 500. That's, people have been on LinkedIn for quite a while now. That's good, but try to make it that quality network. All right. So now you have the informational meeting. Remember we talked about that? So you've got the introduction, you've got that informational meeting. What you should do in that informational meeting to prepare to have a high ROI informational meeting is create a marketing plan like this, okay? So this is another thing you should do. So remember I said before, you want to create like that spreadsheet which has all those targets and it lists the companies, right? Take those companies and put them on a document like this. So this document is partly resume, partly marketing plan. So this is a client who was an attorney. So he this was his objective, which was only on this marketing plan. It wasn't on his resume. So this is enabling people to help you, making it easier for people to help you. So you tell them what you're looking to do. Then this is how I'm positioning myself. What differentiates me? This was on his resume. These bullets were on his resume, right? The target market and target companies was not on his resume. This is, again, helping them to help you. Here's what I'm targeting, and here are the companies I'm targeting. Oops. So when they see this list of companies in your informational meetings, it's like, oh, I know someone at BlackRock, or I know somebody at Pershing. Oh, great. Do you think I should mention your name when I reach out to them? Now you've got a referral, right? So that's why this can be so helpful. Now, so you need to do that, okay? So one more thing, I just want to mention this. To get the slides and the contact management template that all the stuff we've been talking about, this is the link you should put in, bit.ly/BEA020421. So it's today's date. And you'll get the slides and you'll get this contact management template, which we're about to discuss right now. Okay. So let's talk about keeping in touch, because that is half of networking. You know, I had a client who came to me and said, Rob, I need help. I've been looking for a job for a year. I don't know what the problem is. I said, well, tell me a little bit about what you, oh, I'm hearing noise. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So I said, tell me about what you've been doing. She said, well, I had a bunch of great meetings a year ago. And I said, oh, well, what happened? She said, well, I don't know. We lost touch. I said, well, if you had kept in touch with them, you wouldn't need to be talking to me. I mean, you really need to do that so they think of you when something opens up with all these people you're meeting with, okay? So you need to have a contact management system to keep in touch, okay? So you could just have a spreadsheet, and that's the contact management template I'm going to share with you when you click on that link. It's just, a lot of clients do this. Like, you could take the spreadsheet I'm sharing with you, modify it, make it your own. It's just going to give you some ideas. The key things you want on this spreadsheet or in any contact management system is the next action and the date of next action, because every single person that you are talking with, anyone you've ever met with, you want to recontact them. So, and you want to know how you want to recontact them. And really the third field you want there is the priority. So basically you could sort this field by you could sort this spreadsheet or database by next action, date of next action, and priority, and you'll always know what to do on any given day, okay? So you could do that, or sometimes there are more sophisticated contact management systems. I'm not an expert in this, you know. HubSpot is free. I've heard some good things about it. This is a very inexpensive one for Windows. Zoho's, Nimble. These you have to pay for, but they're not expensive. I use something called Capsule for my business. Anyway, there are others. Maybe some of you know more about this than I do, but you should have something, okay? Even if it's just a spreadsheet, which may be totally fine for you, right? So, okay, and plan to recontact your network every 3 to 6 weeks. So, and how do you recontact? What do you say? So clients tell me, Rob, look, you're saying I should recontact them, but I don't know what to say. What do I do? I say, well, look, you've got a couple of ways things you can use as an excuse here to just keep in touch, right? If you just want to keep in touch, you can you had a meeting already, you could provide additional thoughts. Oh, since we talked the last month, I've had some additional thoughts, and then you tell them what those thoughts are. Or you could say, I saw this interesting article, I thought of you. Now, don't send them any kind of link to an article unless you think it'll really be helpful to them. Otherwise, you're showing them how you can hurt them, right? But maybe you don't have an article, maybe you don't have additional thoughts. Then it's super simple, just update them on what you've been up to. As simple as that. Here's an example, right? Hello and update. Hi, Ben, hope things are well with you and you've been healthy and safe during the pandemic, this difficult time. Thanks again for meeting with me last month. Thought I'd update you on how things have been going with my search. I met with Pfizer as well as some other pharmaceutical firms. The conversations have been interesting, may result in something down the road. In the meantime, I continue to reach out to companies and people on my marketing plan. If there's anything I can do for you, including introducing you to people in my network, please don't hesitate to ask. I look forward to talking with you again soon. So there are two things I want to point out about this simple message. First off, what's not in here? What's not in here is, can you please tell me what the status is, or have you heard anything? If you've heard anything, let me know. You don't want to put anything like that in there because it sounds insecure and you don't need to. They get it. They know what you're doing. You're updating them, right? What is in here is if there's anything I can do for you, including introducing you to people in my network, That is super nice. It's super generous. And it's the spirit of networking and relationship building, right? Throw that in there. Okay. So that's all you need to do to keep in touch. If you can't think of any other reason to update them, just to keep top of mind. That's the goal here, to keep top of mind. Okay. To wrap everything up, let's talk about this last slide, kind of sum up what we talked about, right? How do you plan to ensure you don't have a long search, a stalled job search? First, make sure you're positioning yourself correctly, which we discussed, right? Using the words and phrases that are going to resonate. Make sure you're not too broad, too general, trying to be all things to all people, like, finance executive and project manager and, IT executive, right? Or something like that, right? Are you trying to go for multiple targets at once? Make sure you're prioritizing your job targets, focusing on one at a time with some overlap. Are you taking the active approach to the job search? Make sure you're setting yourself up to do that, not just relying on postings. A lot of times when I have a new client, they say, Rob, I don't know, there must be something wrong. Maybe I'm too old or too young or too tall or too short or whatever it is, because, I've applied to over 100 places. I haven't gotten any response. Right away, when I hear I have applied to over 100 places, I'm thinking to myself, that could be part of the problem right there, that all you're doing is applying. That's something that I need to probe further up about, So take that active approach. Be proactive at all stages. Follow up. Don't, after you have a meeting, always follow up. Keep in touch. Very important. Is your message getting lost because of poor communication? Make sure this is something where you need to be self-reflective. Like, if you implement everything I'm telling you to do, but you just are a terrible writer, or you're really bad when you talk to people, but you're a good writer, figure out if there's a gap there and fix it, or do what you can. Have somebody review your writing before you send it out or something. Okay, make sure you're self-aware enough to fix these issues if there are issues here. Are you meeting with both the right people and enough of the right people? About 6 to 10 things in the works, right? Targeting, reaching out to at least 200 people to let them know. Are you targeting enough positions? Are there enough fish in the sea? Are you spending enough time on your search? So I had a client who was saying, Rob, I don't know what's wrong. My search is going nowhere. So I said, tell me about what you've been doing. And he said, well, I said, what'd you do yesterday? He said, oh, yesterday, we had some family. This is pre-COVID, so this doesn't sound normal right now, but I remember him saying, we had some family over, so I really spent only an hour on my search. How about the day before? The day before I was sick. I was a little under the weather. I only spent an hour or two on my search. How was the day before that? Oh, my kid was sick, So he wasn't spending enough time. He was like, if you're not working, this should be your full-time job, okay? And it should be, but don't make it, by full-time, I mean 9 to 5, take a couple of breaks, take a lunch break. At 5 o'clock, leave that job and do what you enjoy doing, whether it's going to the gym while the gyms are still open, spending time with your loved ones, getting on video chats with your loved ones, whatever it is, playing guitar, have that balance. Have that balance. It's very, very important that you have that balance. By the way, and if you're working part-time, if you're working full-time right now, make this a part-time job. I know it's a pain, but it's a great investment, Put 15 hours a week into it. If you do 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, 5 days a week, right? That's already 10 hours, and 2.5 hours on Saturday, 2.5 hours on Sunday. That's 15 hours. You can do it. And lastly, that leads to the point, are you having fun? Are you having balance? If you're just totally consumed by this and you can't let go, you're not going to be as good in interviews. You're going to sound insecure. Won't sound confident. They're going to get it. So try to have that balance, okay? So anyway, this is, again, the link to get the slides and the contact management template. Here's my website, my email, a couple of books I've written that you can get on my website or on Amazon, and I'll take questions.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much. But there was a ton of information, great information. I took a whole bunch of notes myself, so thank you for that. One question is, how has your approach in the job search system changed during COVID times?
My approach, I'd say the approach hasn't changed at all. It's changed on the margins. The strategy has not changed. The strategy is the same. In tough times or good times, you got to do this. What has changed is things like some of the tactical things, like a whole thing now about virtual, right? etiquette for virtual, like how do you dress and how do you, make sure you have a good, if you wear glasses, like you want to make sure there's no glare in your glasses when you're in an interview, for example, right? You want to make sure you're looking at the camera. The dress is business casual. I mean, you don't want to wear, if you're a guy, like a suit is too much. Everybody knows you're home, it just looks odd, or a woman would be the equivalent of that. What would that be? So too much, right? Anyway, so that's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you. And another question, you had mentioned 5 target companies and then 200 positions. And I guess if you could add a little clarity to that, it seems hard. Like you said, a lot of these companies might have 1 or 2 investor relations people. So do you expand beyond the 5 companies? Is that what you're suggesting to get to the 200?
So I didn't. Yeah. I think I didn't. If I said it, I didn't mean it. And I know it's not in the slides. It's not 5 target companies. It's 5 targets. In that example, right? That one example we looked at, there were 4. Actually, in that one example, there were 4. I would say have up to 5. You can have 1, or 2 job targets. That's not target companies. That's targets. A target represents a whole bunch of companies, right? A target is the position description and the type of organization. That defines an audience, which has a unique answer to the question, how can you help me, that you're looking for, right? And across your entire job search, across all the targets, say you have 3 job targets, right? Defined by those 2 parameters, type of organization and the position description. Say you have 3 job targets where each job target represents like a different combination of those 2 things. You want to make sure you are targeting roughly 200 positions across those 3 job targets, so you'll get a job in the next 3 or 4 months. You won't have a year-long or a 2-year-long search. Now, if you're targeting only 100, just, it'll be 6 or 7 or 8 months instead of 3 or 4 months, right? That's what that means. It'll just take you longer. That's how I would think about it. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
This one might be a little quicker answer. I'm not sure, but how do you feel about the open to work green collar on LinkedIn?
Oh, I have very strong feelings about the open to work. In fact, I have a whole post. You should check it out on because it's informative, on my website. It's called "Be Careful of LinkedIn's Open to Work" new feature on my website. It's also a Forbes post. They got like 200,000 views because I love LinkedIn. I wrote a book about it because I love them so much. And I partner with them. I've trained their corporate clients. So I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I'm not a huge fan of the way they've implemented this feature, and they know it. And they've actually reached out to me and talked to me about it. And we have a little bit of a difference of opinion here, but basically, there's that open to work feature. What it does is it gives you 2 options, right? And I'm going to show you. I'm just going to jump over. If you go to, hold on, because it's important here, because there's a lot of people thinking, oh, LinkedIn must know what they're doing. Okay, I would disagree in this case. Okay, so you go to your profile, you click on, I'm just going to click on my profile just to show everybody. All right, because one of the features of open to work you should use, the other one you shouldn't. Okay, see it says show your recruiters you're open to work right here. So you click on that, and look what it does. It gives me choose who sees you're open. There are 2 choices here. All LinkedIn members, or recruiters. You should click on the recruiters only option, because what this will do is it will let recruiters who use LinkedIn's expensive LinkedIn recruiter platform, it's like several $1,000s a year, a small subset of recruiters who use that platform who use that field to source candidates will now see that you're open to work. And if they're using that field, you want to be found in those searches. It's as simple as that. Okay? The other one, all LinkedIn members, it puts this graphic, you could see it around your picture, open to work, it says, this little green graphic. You do not want that, because just to keep it short, read my article for more explanation. Number one, you don't need it. They'll contact you anyway. Anybody who's using LinkedIn to source candidates knows to contact you if they find you and you fit the bill, okay? And by the way, I know this from training tons of recruiters and hiring managers on LinkedIn. So I know this for a fact, right? Secondly, in fact, you think it'll help you? Like, oh, I have this on here, so they'll contact me more? No, it'll hurt you, if anything, because there is a preference for what they call passive candidates, candidates who don't look like they're actively looking. It's like playing hard to get. You're an active candidate. You're saying, please hire me. I'm looking for a job. You know, I know it's tough. COVID's hard. Everybody knows there's more sympathy now for people who are looking for a job, but it doesn't matter. There's still this little bit of bias in there where if it looks like you have something going on, you are a little bit more attractive to them. And again, they'll contact you anyway. If anything, they're more likely to contact you, right? Now, the third thing I've heard is like, well, people shouldn't, what about people? Isn't this a great way to let people in my network know that I'm looking for around? Because then maybe they can help me. People who might know me and want to help, they'll see I'm looking and they'll help me. There are much, much better ways of reaching out to your network than this, right? I mean, you should send an email to your entire network. Think broadly about your network, right? And tell them, just like that woman who reached out to her neighbor and ended up getting an interview, right? And that convoluted connections, right? You want to say, let everybody know, but not this way. Let everyone you can think of know, but not this way. Okay? So that's how I would think about it. And read the posting, my blog post, and you can learn more.
Great. All right. Thank you, Rob. Another question came in about that you talked about that there's a correct way to approach someone that you want to speak with, that maybe you don't have a great connection with, or maybe even a cold call. How can you give an example or what that might sound like?
Of someone who I don't know or I don't know well, how to reach out to them. Is that what you're asking, basically?
Yes, to get a conversation. Yes.
Yeah, well, if you email them, you know, I'll just outline it for you, okay? If you email them, you would say the subject is very specific, right? Something specific that will make them at least open it. Specific could be, it also could be, you know, fellow Beacon, member, right? That's specific enough. They'll at least open it, right? Or, you know, Columbia or Binghamton, where I went to school, you know, alum, right? They'll open that, or it could be open to discussing fundraising at, you know, your university. Name the university. Oh, fundraising. We're always interested in that, and you know, so they'll open that, right? Then you want to say something that's going to get them interested. So by the second paragraph, you have to say what you're looking for. You can't wait till the end to say what you're looking for. You got to say, I'm looking for a 20-minute meeting, right? I'm hoping to get a 20-minute meeting to gain your perspective. Now, if you think they're more doing you a favor than it being mutually beneficial, you should use words that acknowledge that. You say like mutually, you should say like, I would greatly appreciate it, or I'd be grateful for, like, make sure you show appreciation if you think you're asking them for a favor, okay? And ask for just 20 minutes because it's very specific. People think, all right, this person respects my time, right? And then put in, I will try to say I won't be asking for a job. Take the pressure off. I won't be expecting an opening. This is purely informational because you want to get the meeting. Even if there's nothing open now, it could be super helpful to you. As we were saying before, you keep in touch and then a month from now, there's something open or they know somebody, right? So you just want to have a conversation. Then you need to put your pitch in there. Put a little bit of an excerpt of that summary section of your resume we discussed, some background, right? That goes in there, right? Then you want to put something about them. Somewhere in there, you got to put something about either them or their organization or both. Now, it could be half a sentence or one sentence, or I'd say no more than 2 sentences, but something which says like, I'm sharing this with you because I understand what you're going through. Because this could be of great help to you given your expansion in Latin America, right? Or my clients have used your resources. I'm a huge fan of your resources. My clients have used them or something like that, right? Whatever it is, just something specific about them or the company. So it's not just me, right? Have your LinkedIn profile in there. I would say don't attach your resume because the resume says, please hire me. And they'll be more likely to say, no, I don't even want the meeting because he's just looking for a job or she's just looking for a job. You're just trying to get the meeting, right? So that's how you do it. Okay. And then what you do is ask for the meeting again at the end. If you don't hear from them, this is like what salespeople do, that good ones, right? Forward the email again in 3 business days. Say, just forward it and say RE, whatever the subject line was. Hi, X, but I follow up on the email I sent you a few days ago. Do you have 20 minutes available to talk? Just to resurface the email. And if you still don't hear from them, call them. Call them because, and I can tell you, I've seen this over and over. It's hard to do if you don't like sales, and most of us probably don't. Some of us do, are comfortable with it. A lot of us aren't, but it works if you do it the right way. It works. So you call them, and because they'll be like happy a lot of times that you called. Like sometimes people won't respond to emails, but they will respond happily if you call them, and vice versa. They will never respond to a call. They'll be annoyed, but they'll love the email, right? And sometimes it's neither, and sometimes you just don't know, so that's what you need to do. Hope that helps.
All right, great. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the specificity of that. And, we're coming near the bottom of the hour, so I am going to quickly take the screen back. But first, again, I do want to thank Rob for really an amazing presentation. If you folks have not put your email address in the chat box, please do so that if you want to get on Rob's mail list and receive other information from him, that's the way to do it. But I think you could tell in this 90 minutes that he got a lot of great information out there, but he certainly, we know, has a lot more that just didn't fit into this time slot or the program. But I also want to thank all our guests.
Ken, I just want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. If you're getting the slides, if you get the slides from me, I will put you on my list. You'll get, and list means like roughly once a month. You won't be, it's useful stuff. You're far from harassed or anything like that. So if you're doing that, you don't need to type your email in. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, sorry,
Ken, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that because I think too, one of the things that makes Rob successful is he doesn't harass people.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.